Hey, good morning, Trondheim friends, and welcome to this week's edition of Patio Ponderings. And this is also the message that I'm sending out to the Trondheim faith community this week as part of our Thursday email. Happy Halloween, by the way. And it's hard to believe that it's Halloween today and we're going into the Thanksgiving season. I have Mr. Tom Turkey here with me today. And pretty soon it'll be Christmas. But what I've been thinking about is the election season. And there is an election coming up on Tuesday. And it's been contentious and divisive as our political climate has been. We've had some conversations about that. We've talked about the rise of Christian nationalism and how that is an unfaithful way for us as followers of Jesus to engage in our civic duties, that our call is not to legislate our faith or to force it upon other people. We've also talked about the fact that both sides, or all sides of the political spectrum, has issued a call, if you will, that theirs is the correct way to vote if you are a Christian. And we've talked about that, Jesus cannot be contained in one partisan ideology or one political ideology or even in one national ideology, that Jesus came for the world and not just some subset of that. To try to contain Jesus within any particular ideology makes Jesus very small and very weak. So we've had a lot of those conversations. But here's what I've been thinking about this week with the election approaching. And I'm going to be honest and say I've had a little bit of apprehension about how this is going to play out. Because even though the election is next Tuesday, I don't think all the issues, the divisiveness, the violent rhetoric, the actual physical violence and threats of violence that we've seen in this political season, they're not going to go away and they're not going to be resolved. So I've been really thinking about what does it look like for us then as followers of Jesus after the election, however it plays out. What does that mean for how we live our lives as followers of Jesus? One of the places today that I have found guidance is, not surprisingly, in Scripture, but in particularly a letter that we don't often engage with. And it's the letter of 1 John, towards the end of the New Testament. And there's two ideas in here in this letter, as I've reread it this morning, that have helped me put some framing around this and how we live as followers of Jesus in whatever happens over the course of the next few weeks and months. So the first thing comes from 1 John chapter 1, verse 6. If we claim we don't have any sin, we deceive ourselves and the truth is not in us. All of us, to some extent, have had a part to play in the state of our political climate. And I think it bears some self-reflection for all of us. We tend to point the finger at others and say, well, if they didn't do this, or if they would only do that, everything would be right. But, we can only control our own actions. And we've all fallen short of, I think, how Jesus would have us live into our public lives and our political lives. So I think some self-reflection is in order as we go through these next days and weeks. And of course, the other thing, though, comes from chapter 4, verse 2. And it is this, and this is my message. Dear friends, let us love each other, because love is from God, and everyone who loves is born from God and knows God. This is the core of our faith, dear friends, is love. And it is the litmus test, if you will, of all things that happen privately and publicly, politically and socially, is love. And it's simple, but it's also very difficult because we have to really wrap our minds around what does love mean in the context of Jesus and his ministry. And it goes back to the very basic premise that each of us are created in the image of God. Each of us bear that image. And so that anything that diminishes that image in the other is not loving. Jesus particularly sought to remind us that every person, even and especially those on the margins, are also created in the image of God. And so anything that dehumanizes or detracts from that, particularly things like broad statements and stereotypes over whole groups of people, those are not loving. And we have to pay particular attention to loving our neighbor on the edges of our world, our brown and black neighbors, and our poor neighbors, our differently abled neighbors. Love is how we have to proceed. Love is how we have to guide or inspire our words and our actions. And love is not part of the rhetoric of our politics. And so it really calls us to a countercultural way of being. But I know without a doubt, this is what Jesus calls us to, and this is the way forward. It is how we go forward as a faithful people in whatever happens on Tuesday. Whether your person wins, whether your person loses, whatever the fallout looks like or doesn't look like, love is our way forward. Dear friends, let us all be examples of Jesus' love in the world as we go forward. Well, as always, I welcome your comments, your concerns, your own apprehensions, your own anxieties, and we'll see you Sunday, and we'll see what happens after Tuesday, and we will remember, as always, Jesus is still Lord. Bye.